Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 286, and today we are featuring Perry Kelly, which is going to be a very interesting episode, I believe. We'll be covering a wide range of topics. One is FMA journey, his, writing a bibliography on Dan Inosanto. We're going to cover the mountain camp, those famous mountain camps. And then we're going to go into his relationship with him. We're going to also talk about his influence from Burton Richardson, his cross training, psychological training for fighters, and some other things I might be missing on my outline. But again, though, a wide range of topics. So if you're jumping in, please tell us where you're watching from and smash that like button. Without further ado, I'm going to be bringing him up. Hey there. How are you?
How are you?
Good. I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Again, the test run alone was just like, I love it where, not just solely diving on the FMA journey and all that, which is fine, and that's certainly enjoyable, but you have a wide range of stuff and all that. So we're going to be venturing over there, here, there, and everywhere. So,
well, I hope your people watching enjoy it. I'm celebrating my 60th year in the martial arts, about 30 in Filipino martial arts. So met a bunch of people. I can share a bunch of stories. I hope people enjoy it. If you have questions, hopefully I can give an interesting answer. If not, I can tell you about some interesting people you might want to get in touch with who have much, much more knowledge about FMA than I have. And hopefully I can send you in the right direction or your viewers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're always looking for guests to keep the ball rolling, so for sure. So just before we jump in FMA, what was your martial arts background pre-FMA?
Well, I actually was really born into the martial arts. My father started karate training in the late 50s, early 60s here in Ottawa, Canada, with Sensei Ari Anastasiadi, who was a Shotokan practitioner. He used to come into Montreal, from Montreal rather, and was basically the first karate practitioner in Ottawa. And he used to train with him. And he started teaching me karate at about 4 years old. I was so small, they had to get my gi from Toronto or Montreal. Specially made because they didn't have one small enough for me. Then around 1966, I started taking classes at the first karate dojo here in Ottawa with Sensei Andre Langelier, who was also from Montreal, a Shotokan practitioner, who then switched over to Chicho Ryu, Chito, which incidentally is the same karate style that Guro Dan studied when he was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, studying to be a paratrooper under Hank Slamansky, who was Elvis Presley's karate instructor.
No kidding.
Yeah, so, karma and the way the universe interacts. So started in 66. In 1967, I had the chance to study and seminar with the founder of the system, Dr. Chitose, and the then All Japan karate champion, Mamoru Yamamoto, when they came to Canada. So that was a big highlight for me, and continued in karate until I was a teenager. And then, much like when the Gracies hit, you got a rude awakening that, when grappling becomes involved, striking training can sometimes not have a full answer. Then I switched over from karate, who I was studying with Professor George Sylvain, who is also the founder of the Kanryu style of jiu-jitsu, the Canadian style of jiu-jitsu. I started jiu-jitsu with him, and I've continued with that jiu-jitsu style. I'm now a 6th-degree black belt in that jiu-jitsu style under the Canadian Jiu-Jitsu Union. And I've stayed with that. Then I got this book.
What book is that?
That is the Filipino martial arts as taught by Dan Inosanto, which I pulled out today. And I saw that I paid $12.60 back in the day.
Good luck getting that today for that amount.
Yeah, and I said, and I was saying, I was at that time was completing law school, and I was in my mid-20s, and I was still slamming and jamming. I had moved on to in my late teens. I was doing kickboxing, and I had done kickboxing, and then I transitioned. I had done some kendo because I really liked the weapon arts, and I said, as I get older, I won't be able to defend myself as a 60-some-year-old guy, but I'll still be able to have a walking stick and hopefully a folder in my pocket. Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. So I said, maybe I should look into the Filipino martial arts. Okay. And that sort of got me interested. And the picture that you showed was one of the early seminars in Montreal where I met Guru Dan through Tuan Philip Jelina, one of the original Dog Brothers.
He was that's right. Everybody assumes he's PTK, but he was also definitely with the Inosanto blend. And
yes, he brought him in, and that was in, I believe, the winter of '88 or '89, and that's when I went to my first Smoky Mountain camp, to the Great Smoky Mountain Camp, which had
legendary.
Him, Sifu Francis Fong, Larry Hartzell, Bert Ho, Graciela Casillas, Fred Dagerberg. It had a who's who of martial arts.
No, I mean, you're talking about Hall of Famers. I mean, jeez. I mean, those camps, yeah. I just heard, I mean, I've never, fortunately, got the opportunity to go to one, but just from the shows here and the interviews and talking to folks, Dwight Woods and a few others, I hear they were just, it was incredible experience.
Tim Tackett was there, and then you look at the lower echelon, like the second generation of instructors were there who are now legends of their own. Like the second generation, you had guys like Rick Salo from Chicago. You had Greg Nelson, all those kind of guys from all over the United States and all over the world. Rick from Scotland, people that were coming over from New Zealand, all over the world that were coming to these places. Who have gone on to become legendary in their countries or
in their respective countries.
And their areas of the country, who are just like at the Achan level in Muay Thai, or full instructors in the Inosanto blend. Ever since then, over the past 30 years.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, like you said, what's come out of those camps, and like Dwight Woods and all that. And we got folks jumping in. We got Alvin from San Francisco, Robert Small, Missouri, and Hans from Germany. Welcome, guys. Yes, guys, if you're watching, please tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. So your first FMA experience is when Tuan Phil had Guru Dan up. Like, was it overwhelming for you just to compare and contrast?
Yes. I'm telling you, I had been a martial artist for probably 25 years by that time, and I was so frustrated. I was in tears. I was like, how can I not get this? Because when you're doing the drills, you have to know what you're doing, what the other person is doing at the same time to make it work. And if you're working with another newbie, you're both of you are lost.
I went to same thing. I went from Taekwondo to Ron Kozakowski after seeing the first USC, going to MMA, but ultimately I found my true love, FMA. And I just remember like Heaven 6 and all that. I'm just I felt like I was like,
oh yeah, 2 sticks was really bad, but short and long was bad. But even 1 stick was bad because, like, if you didn't know what you were doing, you felt totally lost. And the other thing was, because there were different levels of people at the seminars, Guru Dan would like to teach as I say in his biography, at least 5 or 7 levels, so that every level of practitioner would get something. So he gives, and like, if you could get one thing you could do properly, that would be great. But you try and do the next or third or fourth thing, and you'd be like in tears.
What's funny? Larry Hartzell used to come out there, and I thought like, okay, I'm gonna bring a notebook. I'm gonna get all these notes written down. I couldn't freaking keep up. I'd be writing notes, and they were on the. It was like futile. It was pointless.
I have my notebooks back from that time, and you try your own sort of shorthand, which ends up being gibberish. And
I could, yeah, right. And then you're trying to go quick, and then you go look back at it, and you can't even make heads or tails what you wrote.
You end up little stick figure diagrams,
Oh my gosh. It's like you have to go to many of those to be able to click in. You know what I mean? You can't, you try just going to one.
Well, I went to at least 2 or 3 a year. Luckily, we had Toronto, Montreal, and then Sifu, Kevin Seaman used to have his Finger Lakes camp, which was a 4 or 5 day camp in Upper New York State.
I remember hearing about that.
We have that once a year. So I went to virtually 2 or 3 camps a year for 10 years.
Yeah. See, then you were getting it. Exactly. Yeah. So,
and then you'd have the Los Angeles instructors camp. After 2 or 3 years, I got into the instructor program. So I had the opportunity, to combine some things I was doing with work to fly down and attend the instructors camps in Los Angeles a couple of times, which was a great experience.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I'm in my first certification was Inosanto blend, but mine was through the Vunac lineage and all that. So with regards to the Inosanto, from my understanding, assuming that you're not living in Los Angeles or close proximity to thereof, you went to the seminars and then you went to the camps for your certification. Am I accurate in that?
Well, as I remember, what happened was, I was going to these different seminars for about a year before I put in my application I was under Bob Carver here in Canada, who recommended me to become probationary candidate.
But you had to be recommended.
You had to be recommended. So I was practicing, in addition to practicing under his guidance for 2 or 3 times a week. He was an instructor, so I was a probationary candidate for a year, and Guro Dan was watching my progress for a year. Then I was accepted as a probationary candidate, and then I got under the official apprentice program. And every time Guro Dan saw me at all of these different seminars, and when I went to the instructors camp, he would have me bring me up and do things so that he could evaluate my progress.
That would be like calling in front. I would be like,
front of the class, do this under stress and see how you do.
No pressure.
No pressure. Zero pressure. Yeah.
I would have folded.
But it's, and you talk about the instructor program. You go down to LA and you got guys like Eric Paulson, Damon Caro, Chad Stahelski, and these guys are great at everything, whether it's FMA, JKD, shoe wrestling.
I know, the whole game.
And they were at such a high level, you felt like you were a white belt in everything.
Yeah. I look at that early, in other words, I've always been fascinated with the late 70s group there. Like, for instance, when Steve Grody, Burton, some of them. Exactly. When they were still, I always mix up Torrance and where he's the first and all that. But just the legends that were coming out of there, it's just unbelievable. It was like a farm team. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and I have a lot of these guys. I now have hundreds of VHS tapes that either I bought or friends sent to me that I don't have a VHS machine to play anymore.
Yeah.
But you talk about Steve Grody and Burton and these guys, and then people that you got turned on, like Edgar Salute that you would hear about, and then you get a VHS tape and you'd see what they would do, and it would just blow your mind and add to your knowledge.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Some of the stories Burton would share with me, I mean, just like the golden age, almost, you could say. You know what I mean? That late 70s, early 80s, you know, what was going on there, or who was coming out of there. I mean, if you look at the names, like Steve Crowdy, to me, I mean, Steve makes a point not to really sell himself and all that, but that guy is such a hidden treasure. That guy
Oh yeah,
is,
yeah, phenomenal.
you know,
And you look at how many guys, that were around, like I told you yesterday when we were talking about it in the, Gurdan's biography. I have a chapter that I focus on the work that Jeff Imada did on in the film industry, but that chapter stopped prior to the explosion of the Bourne films, and then the chapter never even covers all the work that Chad Stahelski has done with the John Wick series of
I
films and
know.
Atomic Blonde and all those other credits. So we've got 25 years or 20 some odd years since the book came out of all those other second generation of people like Damon Caro, who's been so involved, was involved in, Fight Club and other films, and has done
Mhm.
other work like that people don't know about, that have to be highlighted. And other people that have been involved in the MMA world, as trainers, like Greg Nelson,
Yeah,
like Kevin Seaman, being the
right.
fight trainer for Tamdam McCrory in the UFC. There's so many other people at the second generation and now the third generation level who have come out of the Inosanto camp that people don't know about.
It's just incredible when you look. I mean, like that link to cinema. You know what I mean? The people that are coming out of there, and just direct correlation to like what we're seeing today in films. You know, it has a direct correlation to the Academy.
Well,
Um,
I just posted something on my Facebook page about Diana Lee Inosanto being in the Maldorian, and
yeah,
a friend of mine from high school goes, "Oh, my son and daughter love that show." And they hit, you mean you're? And I posted a picture of us together. He goes,
yeah,
"You know this person?" I go, "Yeah, she's
yeah. Train with
a
her, been around
beautiful
her.
individual." And there's so many great links that people just don't know.
No, it just goes on. So speaking of the great one, Tana Asano, you obviously have a great relationship with him. Are you finished or you're still status quo writing his bibliography?
Well, it's interesting. I last time I saw him was about 5 years ago, pre-COVID. I was in Los Angeles. I was competing in the World Police Games in the Point Karate tournament, and went into the new location of the Inosanto Academy to pay my respects. And he was so kind. I couldn't get over how kind he was. He stopped the class, introduced me to the class as the only person he trusted to write his biography. Made a point about when I tested for my Muay Thai certification that Ajahn Chai was trying to make his statement, which he was at the time, because the year before I tested, 125 guys tested, 25 got knocked out, and two guys had to go for leg surgery. It was pretty hardcore back in the day.
Wow.
So I was very humbled by what he said, and he's such a big-hearted man.
Mhm.
And I would, I'm in talks with the editor at Black Belt. Who knows? We might be able to do a sequel if it's in the cards. One never knows.
So what I mean, what was the inspiration that, obviously I'm assuming you had to have a talk with them. Hey, I would like to do this. Are you on board with it?
Well, I just, it's like he's such a low key guy, and he's had it himself.
Mhm.
He likes to be Bruce Lee was the number one guy, and he was quite happy being the number two guy behind the scenes. Unfortunately, when Seagung Bruce Lee died, he was thrust as the number one guy for continuing JKD, when he
Yeah.
just wanted to basically, as I see it, continue researching
And
FMA and
being a
doing his
student.
own thing, right? And unfortunately, he was thrown into this spotlight. And I said,
Mhm.
why hasn't anybody written your story? You're such a complex and very interesting guy. And like a lot of people, he's so low key. He's like, why would anybody want to read about me? Well, why not? You are, the encyclopedia of martial arts.
Look what he's done for FMA in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, and a walking encyclopedia of all these other FMA instructors who don't really, or from, in my opinion, and strictly in my opinion, have kept their knowledge to themselves and have not brought it to a wider audience at that time. And I'm saying at that time, other than say, Remy Presas or others in the 80s who hadn't brought Filipino martial arts to the greater martial art world
through traditional schools, or for example,
or the seminar
circuit.
Right. And as we were talking yesterday, at that time, as I said, black belt were calling Silat and FMA, the art of the cannibals and headhunters.
Something, but it was 60s. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just like the cannibal arts.
And there was one mainstream movie with Guy Stockwell that was out called, I think it was called The Philippine Connection or something like that. And it was the only movie at that time in the 70s or 80s regarding that art that came out. Yeah. So there was virtually nothing. So he had studied with so many of the Stockton-based masters.
Isn't he certified in like 20-something?
I tried to list as many as I could at the time. And, in addition to that, he's just kept on making linkages with,
doing, latest I heard was Blentawak under Tillo. Which is like his, he could be doing something else now. But yeah, obviously just to be the
well, Giron, Illustrissimo,
Cabales,
and let me just think. I'll just quickly look.
He's got to have Canetti's in there.
Yeah, John Lacosta, Leo Giron, Regino Illustrissimo, Angel Cabales, who he lists in the book.
Edgar,
Ben Larusa, Floro Villabril. And he was, he'd often give us these little pearls of wisdom. Like he talked about Villabril fighting full contact matches in Hawaii and saying most of Villabril's knockouts would come with the empty-handed hooking hand or elbow. Yeah. And it was like, you always have to know about that, what he called the alive hand.
Yeah.
Right. And, these little pearls that you get when you're working your weapon hand, and always be aware of that other hand, which you get from the training with the long and short.
With the long and right.
Yeah, and so these are things that you really see why they train the long and the short, so that if you are empty-handed, this thing really comes into play.
Yeah, yeah.
And I see this now with my Piper training as well.
What are you talking about, Piper? We're going to get to that Piper stuff.
Yeah.
So were you in? Well, far as the project with him, where are you at with it?
Well, as I said, I've talked to Black Belt, and they're still mulling it over.
With regards to Guru Dan's.
Well, it has to. Before I'm going to go ahead with this, I want to make I don't want to invest the time and then not have a publisher. It's all about this. I've gone the self-publishing route with my book on Jean-Yves Thériault, and I would prefer to have a publisher wanting to go ahead.
Okay.
Before I have
you.
Yeah. But we'll see where things go, and it's a big undertaking because there's a significant portion for the film industry. Yeah. There's a whole thing in Canada that the American viewers may not realize, but Guro Dan was involved in this VHS tape called Surviving Edged Weapons.
Yes.
Back in the day, there was a law enforcement training tape. Now,
21-foot rule, right?
Yeah, the whole Dennis Tueler's 21-foot rule. But because in that tape they mentioned bladed cultures or knife cultures, there were some groups that felt that denigrated certain cultures, certain ethnicities. So there was responses against this, right? So there was that whole aspect of, do certain ethnicities carry blades? Is that, pejorative? Is that, are we looking to cast light, a negative light on certain ethnicities versus is America a gun culture? They focus more on firearms versus other ethnicities that rely more on a bladed culture. Is that a fair statement? Look at England. They've outlawed guns. There's more
blade. You're seeing more blade tax in London.
Is that a fair culture? So those are things that I may want to address in that chapter as well.
I think it's a good, I mean, it's like, before PC was PC.
Yeah, and then, we look at woke, PC, those sort of things. They're all aspects of that. I remember yesterday seeing when we were talking about, going back to Piper, one of your commentators said, when are you going to be attacked like that? Just from my prison experience, I know that in the United States, the Black Guerrilla family has one of its edicts that members of that prison group have to study anatomy and where to stab in, to defeat the vest, and where to stab to hit major arteries, So that's a blade culture. It's a prison blade culture.
The Aryan Brotherhood.
Yeah, the Aryan Brotherhood as well. So, whether you want to look at certain groups favoring the blade, that has to be brought into that quote unquote political discussion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I'm not saying it's a pleasant topic, but one that needs to be at least discussed, I think. Wow. So all right, so you're still working on that. We talked about yesterday, we can segue into this now, is how did, you mentioned, Burton Richardson and the email and all that, which thank you. That email was very informative. Thank you. His influence on you and why?
Well, for Inside Kung Fu had Bird Offerings. Bird Offerings was a great monthly column that Bert used to write on a number of different topics that I really enjoyed. At the time, I was writing some topics on officer self-defense for the RCMP Gazette magazine, the Royal Canadian Mounties. I was writing on some stuff about, officer safety, but I really enjoyed what Bert was offering. And then lo and behold, at one of the Finger Lakes camps, Bert was there assisting Guru Dan. So we had lunch and dinner, for about 5 days in a row, and we struck up a friendship. And, I noticed he was revamping his diet, trying to change his body for some film role.
For years.
No, this was prior to.
Prior to the Crown, because
he was like a big, thick-legged, catcher bodied from when he was
USC.
Be a catcher at USC, and he was trying to slim down to get more movie roles. So I was really interested in what he was using diet-wise to do that. So we talked diet, we talked film, we talked martial arts, and we, our friendship grew from there, and we kept in touch over the years. And he was very much instrumental in giving me writing tips and helping me getting involved writing for different magazines like Inside MA Professional, MA Success, Ultimate Grappling, all those different magazines that I ended up writing for. Great guy. Can't say enough.
No, I've been with him now for, it's almost, it might be going closer to, I mean, I can't speak enough on him. You know what I mean? I could go on, that could be an episode.
Yeah.
Cross, this could be kind of twofold, but let's go with your lens on, and I share the same sentiment with you as cross training and the importance thereof. So your lens on cross training and why?
Well, initially, like as I said, I started in karate, or the striking
Mm.
arts, and then when I realized that the striking arts, or at least what I had been presented, the bunkai or breakdowns in the because I was only a teenager, didn't provide all the answers to things like the grappling equation
Yeah.
or dealing with weapons on a realistic basis based on what I had been presented to me. So
Mm.
I was looking for something more realistic, and that's why I went into Kanryu Jiu-Jitsu from Professor George Sylvain. And he had put together what it is very similar in many ways to a military combatives,
Okay.
similar to a Krav Maga, and it was
Mm.
very down and dirty, and it was a very good self-defense system. It had a grappling components, joint lockings, strangulations, throws, groundwork. It had everything I needed at that time. It had a rudimentary weapons element to it,
Okay.
and then at that time, as I said, I was looking for something at a higher level for weapons. Hence why I got involved in the Southeast Asian
Yeah.
Filipino martial arts. And when you meet Guro Dan, that's one of the things that he. Well, at the time, I was finished with kickboxing, but if you wanted to be an apprentice instructor under Guro Dan at that time, you had to certify in Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And at 31 years old, the last thing I wanted to do was get beat up in Muay Thai.
Or, like, that's so funny, but it's true though. Like, in other words, it's the duality. In other words, when you like under VUNAC, when you got the Kali certification and all that, you got the JKD. It was kind of, hand in hand. And
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
guessing
this
it's
is
the
the
same
thing.
way.
I had to get certified in JKD.
Yeah.
Well, it came along. I guess I
Yeah.
didn't have to, but I did get certified in Jung Fong Gung Fu JKD. But you had to get and go through Ajahn Chai's
The Thai.
Thai certification, which was brutal. And I mean, seriously, brutal. I'm not kidding. People were getting like it was shin on shin, no headgear back in the day, and people were getting seriously messed up.
Shin on shin. Sign me
Shin
up.
on shin. And like, the first time I tried, I didn't pass the Ramui ceremonial dance. I didn't get to fight. But I was so beat up from Ajahn Chai beating me up the night before the test that I couldn't get out of the car when we drove back. It was hard for me to get out of the car.
Yeah, I believe it. It's funny. I've done obviously, JKD has the big Thai component, and of course, it was with the VUNAC lineage as well. But I just remember it was my least favorite aspect of the whole curriculum, and it's because, okay, why do I want to land shin on shin? It was counterintuitive to me. Like, isn't there another way I could bypass that kick, or I don't know. It just
Yeah.
tremendous respect for them. I do, but it was the least that resonated with me.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's like it was like, why did I sign up for this? I thought I had left kickboxing behind like 10 years ago, but
Yeah, right.
to get to where I wanted to go,
Yeah.
and learn the stick and the knife and the other aspects, it's the rite of passage that I had to do. So
Yeah. No, if you want this, you got to go through here.
you got to go through the garden of pain, to get it. But since then, what I liked though was I got introduced to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu through Guro Dan, shoot wrestling, which I really loved at the time, through Yuri Nakamura, Silat, which was really, really interesting as far as seeing, as it was interesting because for me, I even wrote an article on the dance aspects of martial arts. For instance, Guro Dan always said that, the guidebooks would say Silat, a quaint Indonesian dance, and they would hide the combative aspects of Silat in the Juros.
The Jews, yeah.
Yeah, and I drew the parallel to capoeira, where the slaves would hide the fighting aspects in the dance because they couldn't practice their fighting arts.
Okay.
So that they would do that as well. And here's two arts half a world away doing basically the same thing.
Oh, neat. Just, wow.
Yeah. So, we were exposed to all these different kinds of things. And I continue to this day. I have a student of mine who was one of my Muay Thai students who is a master at close quarter combat Sambo. And I'm studying under him now because it's sort of like a special forces type of Sambo. So, and he's teaching me stuff that is making, like, Tony Blauer teaches the spear, which is
I love it. Yeah.
It's a flinch response.
Oh, I love that stuff.
So if you're caught unaware, your body is going to flinch.
Natural biological. Yeah.
Right. So try and do something combative with your flinch. So what the CQB Sambo is, which is really interesting, is you're never going to be able to study all different kinds of martial arts. So what they do is they make you flinch in a way that they'll know how to counter. So it's the flip side of Tony Blauer's coin.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what I did is I had shown him the shimmering blade from Piper. He showed it to his instructor. His instructor, while he was shimmering, his instructor made him flinch a certain way and then knocked him out. So he made him flinch. So, like I said, it's the flip side of the blower.
Okay.
Creating
That's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah. So this is why I'm always searching for a better mousetrap for martial arts, a key, a piece of the puzzle, or a better tool for my toolbox through cross training.
No, well, and we got a question here that's going to kind of just go along with what you're saying. This is from Chris Anderson, and this question is to you. Of all the martial arts he has trained with over the years, which two had the greatest impact on his personal style?
On my personal style?
Yeah, which
two? Well, I'd have to say the Kanryu Jiu-Jitsu is the one that's burnt into my neuromuscular patterns the most. In the sense that whenever I am grabbed, I constantly go back to an eyes or a groin strike for my own personal self-defense because of the, from the ages of 14 to say 25, where I did that 3 times a week. It's so burnt into my neuromuscular patterns when I'm in a situation where I'm jumped upon. That's what. So in that way, in another way, maybe not a martial art, but through my training in police tactics, whether at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, whether with Correctional Services of Canada, or other police training that I had with the American Society of Law Enforcement Training, law enforcement trainers. It's that situational awareness, which is the mental aspect. Being in the code yellow and looking at people's hands, looking for exits where I can get out of a bad situation, having my spidey sense tingling so that I don't get into a situation where I have to resort to using hands-on physical self-defense. So that's sort of the two things that have ingrained on me.
Yeah, it was a great question, Raymond. Thank you, Chris. Okay, let's jump into. You mentioned you found Bert Richardson's post there on the questionable lethal force, when using a knife, in regards to whether it's Piper or it's FMA, Indonesian, and all that. Why did that post resonate with you? And then we'll tie it into Piper.
Why Bert's columns on I need you to give me more about that.
So in other words, you quoted, like, he made a post some months back and it was in reference to Piper. He used Piper as the example, or that to highlight his post, but it was basically on lethal force, the question of lethal force when using an edge weapon, and he happened to use Piper system as the example and all that. And your email, that's hit it, you enjoyed his post and all that. So I guess what I'm asking you is what resonated with you regarding his post?
Well, specifically, I think with regard to the elements of Piper, one of the things that where Piper comes from, it comes from, as I learned from working in the prison system. We as martial artists always have a code of ethics to a certain degree. We believe in fairness. We believe in not, for want of a better word, torturing people, hurting people without necessity. Criminals don't adhere to the same code of ethics. And Piper and the use of the blade, the originators of what then became the Piper system, those gangsters, they went in. There was no dueling. This was an ambush system, right? And as I was saying yesterday, there's really few knife fights in prison. It's more assassinations and ambushes. And to learn, we always say, to learn how to defend against the knife, you have to learn how to use the knife. But to learn how to defend against assassinations and ambushes, you have to get into the mindset and learn the techniques of people who are going to do you harm as well. So, from reading hundreds, if not thousands of reports coming out of the United States and Canada, raw intelligence data about how people were attacked daily, that was sort of like my, master's degree in that kind of violence, right? And the Piper system adds to that as to how people will come up and do you harm with an edged weapon, or more probably a pointed weapon in prison. It's more likely a spike or a pick or something
sharp and
something with a pointy end to it, right? Again, get close to you. So that's why distancing, being aware of how close people are you, their proximity, how close to where they are behind you, to the side of you, viewing their hands, seeing where they've got their hands positioned to their body, how they bladed their hands, those sort of things, recognizing, how they're looking to distract you, how they're looking to make you interact with somebody so that you're not noticing them and what they might want to do to you. That's what resonated, and that's what comes from the Piper, that how people work in teams, or we just have to look at what's happening in the New York subway system now. The amount of slashings and stabbings reminds me of when I used to go to New York in the 70s, and it was like a bloody war zone to get
terrible. Yeah, terrible. It's Piper. And the thing about it is, what people don't, when I first started doing it, people asking me like, well, why are you doing that system? And the thing is, it's like, no, I'm not doing it to embrace the criminality. I mean, geez, I'm doing it to understand the offense. And like you just mentioned, God, how would I deal against this if this came about me and all that? So it's really understanding. And it's it's a very tactic-based system. There are no drills. There's no memorization, really. There's some as far as the techniques and all, minor troll, the shimmer and pick flick and what have you. But it's really tactful based.
Well, maybe I can offer something that can put this in perspective. I with a lot of my Muay Thai or kickboxing students, I will teach them what's known as illegal or dirty boxing, right? How somebody's going to thumb you in the eye, try and break your elbow in a clinch, how somebody's going to use the edge of the glove to rip your eyebrow, right? Miss the hook to elbow you in the nose or the temple. Do I advocate these things? No. Or somebody uses the uppercut and clips you under the chin, right? Do I advocate these things? No. But you better know how to protect yourself against these things. If you're a corner man, you better be able to see the other guy doing those things and let the referee know.
Good
right?
analogy.
So this is the analogy that I would hope. You better recognize these things to protect yourself against them, right? So I don't teach my fighters to do these things. But if somebody's jabbing, and I'll just see this, if I'm jabbing past my own head, right, it's because the thumb is coming to clip you in the eye.
Right.
So if the guy's, missing the jab all the time, he's trying to thumb you in the eye, right? And there's whole books written on this stuff that have come out from my old publisher, Paladin Press. Dirty and Illegal Boxing.
It's fascinating to me. Absolutely, I don't embrace it. I don't advocate it, but it is just fascinating the things they'll do to, like you said, like, I missed a hook. Oops. It's wow. What So you're currently, training in Piper and all that. I mean, what makes you still want to continue with it?
Well, what I'm embracing right now is Filipino martial arts. We put, I'll tell you, I had an epiphany. I was training a student friend of, who's been a friend of mine, and he's a friend of Michel Doiron's as well, Cal Lawrence. Cal Lawrence was the amateur heavyweight boxing champion of Canada. In addition to that, he was our prime minister's protective detail, which is like the Secret Service presidential bodyguards, right? Now, we were teaching him the knife, right side forward, dominant hand knife, right? And then one day, I had him put the knife in his left hand with his left foot forward with a downward earth grip. And he was like, oh, I feel so much better. Why? He's got 40 years of footwork that he doesn't have to throw out the window. Right?
Interesting.
So I had an epiphany moment, and I said, what if we train people who come to us learning FMA, right? Who already have training, and instead of making them switch from an orthodox stance to a southpaw stance, right foot forward, we keep their footwork and let them use their jab hand, which is going to be faster.
Why not?
Why not? Right? So for me, because I'm training in Piper and Lloyd is a left-handed Piper guy.
That's it. I know.
I'm using my left hand, which is my faster hand, right? And it allows me to use it that way. So that's one thing. The other thing is, excuse me, so I get to keep my natural footwork, my faster hand, right? And the other thing is, Piper allows things like how you can use your body to rip the knife away if somebody tries to grab your hand. It doesn't have the roll and slash that we have in FMA from wrist grabs.
Right.
It also has things like, you position yourself so if somebody tries a 2-on-1 grab, they're going to grab the knife or they're going to eat an elbow or something like that.
Yeah. To me, it's funny. What you're talking about is those who are watching. If I'm coming here, you're tempted. Boom. Now they run into the kind of the state.
Yeah, it's got all these little twists and turns that, as I said, it's another tool in the toolbox. Does it have all the answers? No. No martial arts has all the answers. But if I know that if I keep my body and I turn it away, right, it gives you less chance of getting my weapon. And if you're coming to grab my weapon and you're doing this as I'm ripping it away, it's a better day for me than it is for you. That's all I'm saying. So it's saying, okay, Filipino martial arts takes me this far. It gives me the ability to do this. I've added this aspect to it. It gives me just a little bit more. So I've now gone from 60% chance to maybe a 67 or a 70% chance of surviving. Because we'll always use that 3. He's better than you. You're better than him. You live. you're both the good, you both
Or
die,
you're
right?
both, yeah.
You know that old adage that we use in Filipino martial arts. Like, I want to put the advantage the most in my favor and survive any lethal, non-lethal encounter, so that I survive physically and I survive the legal ramifications of this afterwards as well.
Right. No, well said. Yeah, and again, well, I mean, you obviously know my opinion on Piper, and you're also currently, those who might have missed it if they didn't jump in the beginning, you just wrote an article with some of our input for Black Belt magazine, right?
Yes. Thank you very much for your input, and also Burton Richardson. I sat down and I wrote an article with Lloyd DeYoung about the origins of Piper, how it blends Zulu fighting, English boxing, and Silat from Cape Town, South Africa. And we talked about the elements of it, some of the tactics, some of the techniques, what makes it different from FMA, where it came from the prisons, how he and his predecessor gathered those techniques. And Nigel February. And I've submitted it to Black Belt. They're interested, and currently Lloyd is shooting some pictures to show them, and if they like it, hopefully it'll be coming out in an issue in the near future.
Oh, well, let's hope so. And and it was awesome of you to cover this. So.
Well, you see, I always like to. I sent them something on the CQB Sambo, which was different from other types of Sambo that you may have seen. I sent them to it. They said same thing. Do you have pictures? Sent pictures. They like what they saw, and they published it. They're always looking for something different.
Yeah.
Which was, I remember back in the 60s, they used to have these painted covers of, two Russian guys fighting in Sambo, or two guys in the back alleys of Marseille kicking with Savat. Yeah. And that's what they had,
Yeah.
So I like to see if I can come up with the readers something different that they may have never seen before.
Yeah, I think you're going to achieve that with Piper. I mean, and the nice thing with Lloyd, as you know, like he really makes a point to separate himself from that criminal element. He obviously gives acknowledgement to it from where it comes from, the point of origin, but without really embracing that. And hopefully, Black Belt magazine, I'm sure we'll see that through your writing.
Well, and even one of the things that I've asked him to point out is, even when you look at a offensive pointed weapon attack on an unarmed person, the caption we'd like to put in there is, what if you're a 9 or 10-year-old girl being attacked by an adult for a sexual assault situation? This may just save your life if this person happens to be, HIV infected, or is going to murder you after this attack.
Yeah, or women's self-defense. I think Piper for women's self-defense, the reverse grip, the protecting of the weapon, the triggers. I mean, I think for women, I think it's like off the charts. But it's just that element. It's just got that. And hopefully, as time goes by, that'll become less and less a factor. The negativity that's been associated with it.
Well, we look at it this way. I think it'll be a transitory period. I think Filipino martial arts have gone from, he's carrying a knife, that's a thug weapon. Filipino martial arts are now being embraced as, it's Filipino martial arts. It's gone mainstream in movies with the Bourne series, the John Wick series. So it's gotten wider acceptance, right? It's not as taboo as it might have been in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, 90s, and now. Filipino martial arts and use of the blade in mainstream media is now more accepted, So there may be a transitory period, but I think it will gain acceptance.
I think so too, especially with his particular sanction. Me and Burton under him, like pushing that, like, hey, no, we don't embrace the criminality. We just acknowledge it where it came from. And I think if more people see that and understand we're coming from the lens of self-defense, how to use the tactics, self-defense, or better, what could be coming at you.
You're right. A police trainer that I took a session with, put things in perspective one time. He said, he was teaching at that time using one single stab and grinding on the bone to seek release, right, of a grip or something like that.
Mm.
And he was saying, this is different from, multi/slash Filipino response. He says, because in court, a single wound looks better than multi/slash.
You're doing a template on somebody.
Yeah. So, and once again, it's the visual and how you can, as a, as a retired lawyer and a criminal justice practitioner, how you can defend what you did in the totality of the circumstances in court of law.
That's a
whether you're a law enforcement officer or a civilian.
Yeah. Is it legally defensible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. No, that is just. Let's touch on that. So let's touch on your career in law enforcement, and then you can tell us about PPCT. So why don't you tell the folks your career in law enforcement and what have you?
Well, I come from a family that my uncle was a police officer, and he was sort of my idol growing up. He became a detective. It was involved in a fatal gunfight where he survived. His partner became the chief of police, and other side of my family, I'd have been exposed to some organized crime associates growing up.
Oh, they're okay too.
They're okay too. So I got
a vowel at the end of their name.
I got to see one of the guys that taught me how to weightlift did a bit in prison for. He was a former Canadian Professional Football League a guy who unfortunately killed a guy in a bar fight, but and he was an associate of organized crime. So I got a blend of both of them. So after law school, so I had a bit of a street sense, going to a law school with all these upper crust silver spoon in their mouth. And a kind of funny story, I'm in my criminal, what was it called? Criminal Justice Administration class. I'm trying to remember what it was. But we had a fingerprint class, and they're passing around a pistol that was used in a bank robbery. And the evidence tag is the name of a kid I grew up with.
They left a name on it. Oh my God.
They left the name, and I'm like, that's Eddie. Eddie, and I know Eddie. So anyways, like I said, all these kids were from upper class backgrounds, and I knew this bank robber. So I get out of law school. It was during the early 80s, and it was in the depression, the recession period. And the law firm that I worked for couldn't offer me a job. And if they were going to offer me a job, it was making less money than I was making washing floors at the local hospital. So I'd applied for a job as an investigator with the prison ombudsman's office, which investigated prisoner complaints. So I did that for 5 years and went in and investigated complaints by prisoners about abuse, misuse, all sorts of things in that nature for about 5 years. And so I interviewed serial killers, rapists, gang members, terrorists, from soup to nuts.
Crime, huh?
Well, you're 25 years old. Martial artists think you're bulletproof. And now I think back and I'm like, I'm locked in a cell with a guy who's murdered. Seriously, locked in a 5 by 10 foot cell with a guy who's murdered 20 people, right? Who could anytime stick his pen in my eye and do me in, right?
But that sharpened toothbrush.
Yeah, the PTSD only comes later, right? So, I met all kinds of, like I said, it was my master's degree in learning criminal psyche and rationalizations of these people who, like I said, they don't play by the same rules, right? The sociopathic, psychopathic mindset of, you have what I want. I'm a wolf and you're a pork chop. And I'm going to take what you have and I'm going to sleep that night and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, I know.
And then afterwards, going to work for the Correctional Service of Canada, I was their national coordinator for use of force. So wrote policy and training on how they use force, change their policies to help them defend themselves. More use of cameras for their cell extractions, better training. And I was in charge of their emergency response teams as well. So worked, another 5 years doing that as well to help modernize their stuff. So at the age of 40, I went through their SWAT team training as well. So these guys were like, come on, you're 40 years old, you're a lawyer, and you're going through this with us. And I said, I can't criticize the scope of your training if I haven't gone through it myself, which gave me a lot of props.
So so what I want to tie into now, how did your FMA training go into your training? I mean, did it come into play? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you, what comes into play is more my martial art training.
As a whole, okay.
As a whole, like the training that they were using was the Koga Jitsu system out of LAPD, Robert Koga, which was very much a Aikido Jiu-Jitsu system training, and it was very good. But it was in my mind, and I don't want to appear to be critical, but it was good for a street cop, but in the close confines of a cell with all the equipment, a team member, there were some techniques that I didn't think would be usable, like a Sankyo, twist wrist lock, in a close confine when you're all kitted up and you got three others, team members coming in behind you. Okay. I didn't like some of those things, and they had many, many different types of techniques. I thought it was too many techniques and too specific techniques for different things. I think we were looking at the time that I was there that you could have whittled it down to a few techniques. So what I tried to do, I tried to bring the spear system in to them. At that time as well, they were using the dusted lead gloves, which they said was for their own protection. The SAP gloves, I had those removed because they were too offensive in nature. I brought in the cameras because, as I said, if you're doing your job right, there's no better protection for you to show the jury than that video. And it was an uphill battle, and had a couple of guys come up to me and say, like, oh, you convinced me, but I was going to challenge you physically to a fight and stuff like that. And these are guys that were on my own team, But, it was, I'm glad I had my martial art training because guys respected that. They respected I was a lawyer because I was trying to help them not get jacked up.
Yeah, right.
And then doing my interviews, I'm glad I had my training because, guys would show up, and at one time a guy pulled out his X-Acto craft knife out of his pocket during an interview. So it was like, okay, you almost got brained with the chair I'm sitting on, buddy. And how did you get through the metal detector with that? So, yeah. There's some scary moments where you got death threats and things like that. So
that's just fascinating, though. Wow, that's great. Jeez. All right, let's go. So when did you start teaching, and what did you teach?
Well, I started as a teenager, and in late teens teaching jiu-jitsu and karate. Okay. And then as I got certified to teach FMA, as a Lankan Guro, teaching, doing seminars, sort of what I do now, teaching the introductory stick and knife for the people that want to see that. A lot of the schools have no a lot of martial arts schools have no inkling about the stick, and they're very interested to see what what they can learn from that. So, you teach them, the basics of the stick, some basic disarms, and they really like the drills, like moving forward, moving backwards, circular. And also for a lot of traditional karate schools, like I was telling you yesterday, the triangular footwork is something new that they like to see.
Non-existent almost,
It's non-existent. And as I said, for me, this is what I brought into when I got back 45 years later into my karate training, was using that triangular Filipino footwork was very, very helpful for me to win at in karate tournaments, because it would freeze karate practitioners who weren't used to seeing that. And in that fraction of a second, when they were trying to formulate a response, I was able to go in and score.
Right. Okay. Wow. So, geez, that's awesome. So what do you, okay, obviously COVID, kind of put a halt on things. So are you starting back up? And if so, what are you teaching currently and where?
Well, what I do is I go into the people I've come in before. It's been 2 years, so if I get back, it'll probably be either a refresher or introductory stuff. But what I like to do with the people that I know is, I've been in there before. I've taught, I taught different things. Like I'm certified to teach Frank Shamrock's MMA system. So I do that. I do some realistic self-defense, realistically based self-defense, RBSD, things like that, open hand striking. I did a session on that. Dealing with multiple opponents, I deal that. I'll do things like verbal de-escalation techniques from things that I've learned like that from the policing end. So if I've done, Muay Thai, JKD Jung Fan, trapping, if I've done Filipino martial arts, if I've done MMA, basically I've said, here's the buffet. What did your students like? What do they like to see more of? And I try and generate for the school owner what they would like me to come back and deliver more. Because of COVID, we might have to go right back and start from the beginning.
I know. Yeah. So, and he's and this is in the area. I'm sorry, Ottawa.
Ottawa, yeah, the nation's capital.
Okay. And I'm assuming the schools that you're going to are more on the traditional side.
Yeah, we have a lot of we have mostly jiu-jitsu, karate schools. We have Thai boxing, MMA schools, and taekwondo in this area. Not a lot of gung fu schools, unfortunately. I'd like to see more gung fu in the area, but we don't have a lot.
Okay. Well, that's nice that you're in an area, it seems like, where you could flourish. I mean, as far as what you have to offer. Okay. Wow. And were you, and you were doing seminars as well, pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
We just put a squash on everything, huh? I mean, jeez. Well, I mean, hopefully you get back in the door and.
Well, what I like to do with friends of mine is basically give them a helping hand, And what I would encourage a lot of people giving seminars is, like, I know, your seminar returns might have been down, but try and help the school owner out, right? Look at what they're paying you and try and make sure that, they can make some change and you can make
by bringing you in. Absolutely. I always try to do it's like, I mean, make them part of the equation. They're probably more likely to bring you back.
Yeah. Well, this is what I try and say. It says, look, you let me know what you've made, and you let me know what you think of, what I'm worth.
What's fair?
You pay me a fair day's wage, and I'll be happy with that. And then as business picks back up and things get rolling, let's make this a multi seminar venture.
We can always revisit. That's a good outlook.
Yeah, because we're all in this together, right? And everybody's been hurt by this, but let's try and get everybody's business rolling back again, because students want to practice, they want to get out there, they want to see things back again. So why not work synergistically together?
No, music's my ears. I totally agree with you. It's like, don't try to go make that bang for the rap to get go. I mean,
well, and I take this I see this happening in the restaurant industry or the hotel industry, dinging people too harshly, and people are going, well, I can continue eating at home, or I'm going to stay with friends, as opposed to going to a restaurant or staying at a hotel if they're going to try and hit me up for all the money they've lost during the pandemic.
It's not a good way to go about it, in my opinion. Next, you kind of coach fighters with kind of the psychological aspect, which I found interesting yesterday. So what can you tell us on that, as far as what you try to impart in them?
Well, one of the major flaws, and I have no ego, so I'll just be quite blunt. One of my biggest drawbacks as an 18-year-old kickboxer was the lack of feeling secure as a kickboxer, and just being afraid, just not having the confidence and being afraid to go ahead and jump in and having a lot of fights. I trained, but I never fought because I just didn't feel comfortable enough to do it. So luckily, when I decided to get back into point fighting karate at, closing in on age 60, I was saying to myself, like, I'm going to be going against these people who have been doing this for all their lives. What makes me think that I can even be competitive at this? So I got a number of psychological coaches. One was Brian Willis, a police officer based in Western Canada. The other one was Sifu Kevin Seaman, who is also an FMA practitioner, and also Lanny Bassam, who is an Olympic coach and Olympic gold medalist. And basically, they gave me the tools to say, well, yes, but you didn't fight when you were 18, but you went through probably one of the hardest things to go through when you got your Muay Thai certification. That was like the deck was stacked against you to get beat up. Yeah. You've sparred with professional Muay Thai fighters and kickboxers. You've sparred with amateur champions, over the last number of years. You still spar at age, in my late 50s with amateurs and pros. So, there's nothing you got to worry about. But it was to gain that confidence, right? So I took what all these people gave me, whether that's visualization, positive self-affirmation, drills, all these different things that go into psychological training. And now I'm able to give those to trainers that are in my gym, my Muay Thai gym. So, whether it's their first smoker fight, whether it's their first amateur fight, or I've trained with people that are fighting for amateur titles, and I'm just able to visualize, have them go through visualization training and give them some positive self-affirmations, or just get their confidence up to so that they can go into the ring feeling that they can do this.
That's awesome. Wow. And you've been doing this as of late, correct?
Yeah, it lasts probably about the last 3 years.
Wow. And
I had 2 fighters fight the last 2 weeks. Both of them got outpointed, but both of them just told me, they said, they just felt that much more comfortable. And as I said, for a lot of people, whether it's you want to do a full contact stick fight, whether you want to do a kickboxing, Muay Thai fight, a jiu-jitsu competition, or whatever, it's all about going through the training, getting yourself ready for the competition, and doing it. It's not like you're going to be a pro at this or an Olympian at this. It's just going through the training and doing this and having the confidence to do it, which separates you from 99% of the population, right?
Yeah. I mean,
then you can be happy about that you've done it. And I sent my fighter this quote by Teddy Roosevelt, President Teddy Roosevelt. It's this, you're standing in the arena marred with dust and blood, knowing that you've done this, which separates you from those faint of heart that know not that experience.
Yeah. Well said. Good old Teddy.
Well, Teddy, you remember Teddy, boxing, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
He was a kick-ass president. He did all that stuff.
Yeah, we need him again here. I can tell you that much. So what are you currently, besides Piper, what are you currently studying? Anything new or?
Well, I'm doing distance learning, and hopefully we'll be getting in my close quarter combat Sambo instructor in. He's supposed to be coming down in the fall to do a huge World Kobudo Federation event. We're going to try and have him in with, if I can set something up for Michel and his students to do private, because
that guy is, man.
his gun takeaway stuff. Just give a shout out to Phil Duncan. If anybody is in the Metro Toronto area, look this guy up to train with him. His gun takeaway and gun retention stuff is off the chart.
Really?
I want to expose his stuff to Michel and Michel's students.
Yeah.
And if we can set up a seminar for him, that would be great. So this is stuff I've been training with him, and still want to. I'm rehabbing an injury, but I want to get back into working on my empty hand skills with the Muay Thai people for just my health and exercise.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. No, that's fantastic. What about you're still publishing in Black Belt Magazine, correct?
Yeah, I'm still one of their writers for them and Martial Arts Success. So, like MA Success is more the industry publication, but I've done stuff for the Professional Fight League, One Championship, Bellator, and UFC. So, as their MMA correspondent, they've given me a number of fighters or MMA presidents to cover. So, do stuff for them. And or come up with interesting things for Black Belt Piper to submit to them. So if anybody's got a good story that they want me to look into, either through you or through my website, perrywkelly.com, just get in touch with me, and I'll definitely look into it.
I'll have to figure something out. Yeah. How long have you been with them now, Black Belt Magazine?
Let's see, probably about around 15 plus years.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, the first thing I did was fear, adrenaline, stress training. Bill Kipp stuff out of Colorado.
Okay.
I made some lifelong friends. Met Kat and his wife, the Fitzgeralds, out of Nashville. Did a seminar down for them out in Nashville. Had a great time doing that. This is a great thing. You do stories on people, you get to meet them, and you make lifelong friends, or big names that you can quote later on. Like I said, I've interviewed Henzo, Hoyce, and Hickson Gracie, and three of the nicest people I've ever met, and just icons in the grappling world.
Yeah, right, within the BJJ world.
I've rolled with Hoyce at least, but at least I know, if I go to LA or New York, and I've run into Henzo when I covered the Bellator fights in Long Island. You meet these people, and they're such gracious people, and this is one of the great things about covering for Black Belt or MA Success. I got to write a story on Frank Shamrock. I met him. I got to be his student, hung out with him a whole bunch of times, and got to make a great friend as well.
I mean, you can't. Yeah, God, I think about you're doing what you love, and on top of it, you're meeting great people.
Yeah. Well, the same was with you. You've got your podcast. You get to meet
that's true.
Train with great people, and martial art brotherhood or sisterhood. It can't get any better than that.
No, it's opened a lot of doors that I never expected when I first started doing this. I was just wondering if people were to listen to me or watch it, and so it's definitely opened up doors. For instance, you and the magazine, obviously, that would have never happened if I didn't do the broadcast, because I would have never met Lloyd. You know what I mean? So it's definitely opened up a whole gamut of stuff that I wasn't initially thinking of when I first started this in late October 2019. So it's been a wild ride. I mean, it really has. And
you're closing in on 300 episodes. That's fantastic.
Closing on 300, and I think there's a bigger circuit to come out. I think we're going to basically make group, like a band of us going to get together and do seminar training under basically under the FMA discussion, name. So I think there's going to be things that are going to come out of this. I hope, I think with the right people, they can come together, and I think it's feasible.
Maybe you'll be the next Smoky Mountain camp.
Yeah. That would be, the big. I tell you, what would be the huge thing if that were to occur? What would be the biggest juggernaut? Who to pick? There's just, there's just so many incredible people I've met through these interviews that, they all are just so deserving. You know what I mean? It's like, who do you pick? That would be.
Well, I think a lot of it is as well. Like you have the Legends Camp, the Inosanto Legends Camp in Los Angeles. You have Jerry Beasley's Karate College in Virginia.
That's
but
right.
the Northeast has really been,
that's our target area.
Really hasn't had anything for a long time. And for people in the Canadian East, or for at least Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes, if you guys could set something up for your tri-state area and like the Canadian East, you get tons of people. It would be fabulous.
Yes, that's our first target area, and doing something upstate New York to bring over the Canadian folks. So I think it's feasible. I tell you, you get the right people who are similar goals as you, are willing to work together for a common goal. It's amazing what you can get done. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, and like I said, it's been so long since there always was a Canadian contingent that used to come to the Finger Lakes camps because they could get certified in an art or two or whatever, or at least be seen or see the people that they wanted to train under, and like I said, you could make lifelong friendships or business connections that, like, I have people that I met 30 years ago that this week or weeks ago that I'm still in touch with.
It's amazing.
And, it's absolutely
that's
amazing.
Great. It is yeah. I mean that's.
Wow. And there's people I met at the Smoky Mountain camp that were teenagers that are now middle-aged.
Isn't that something? They were teenagers. And you look at that now, like the grown men.
Ricky Young from Scotland was a teenager.
Ricky Young? Yeah.
From Scotland was a teenager, and he's now I think he'd probably be in his 50s now.
How brilliant for him as a teenager to foresee that and come out here as a teenager.
Yeah. And you look at him, he is probably one of the most highly ranked, most knowledgeable martial artists in Filipino martial arts, grappling, all different kinds of martial arts in the whole of Scotland.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
And he was he was probably, I'm thinking 19 or something like that.
For him to see that vision, though, that's pretty incredible. At 19, you're going to go across the big water to this camp, and obviously it's paid him dividends. I mean, wow.
Oh, for sure. And on top of that, to have the cojones to come across the big pond.
That's what I mean.
At 30, I was scared to go into the Smoky Mountains because they were sitting around the campfire singing those songs about, kill my wife and I threw her in the pond.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because the year before they had done a wild boar hunt, and one guy went in and stabbed the boar with a homemade knife, so it's like, okay, yeah, this is pretty interesting,
Yeah, I'm thinking Deliverance. I don't know.
There were more guns at the Smoky Mountain camp than I had ever seen in my life in Canada, because people came from everywhere and brought their pistols with them on the road trip because they had a whole shooting thing, like people could go out to the range.
Oh, the range. Okay. That makes sense.
So people were sitting in the sun cleaning their guns, getting ready for this, So coming from Canada, where you had to have a special permit to even own a pistol and a special permit to take it to the range, and it had to be either at your home or at the range, my eyes were like, okay,
Yeah, I was coming here for martial arts training. I didn't know. So what? Besides that, like, if there was, besides Piper, if there was something you had the time, the ambition, what other system would you like to do in FMA? If you had the time and to do a new FMA system, what would it be?
I don't know, because I don't know if my body could handle a lot of, I wish I was 20 so that I could do Dog Brothers. You know, I would really like to test myself again, because at the time that I was doing full contact, I was doing what I called Puppy Brothers, because I was like mid 30s to 40s.
Yeah.
So what I was using was a hockey helmet, hockey gloves, and shoulder pads. And I was using the smaller sticks, right?
Okay.
I would like to have gotten to test myself into the heavier sticks with less padding, right? That being said, I still have trepidation with regard to the amount of contact to the head, because I know now at my age, at closing in on 65, I don't know how many concussions I've had, because we didn't have concussion protocol, right? A couple of years ago, I had a concussion where I first experienced post-concussion syndrome, but I don't know. I've probably had a dozen or more concussions through football and the different martial arts over the years. So while I would have liked to have experimented with the Dog Brothers FMA, I still have, I'd be worried about the amount of head contact using the fencing helmet. The other thing was I've always been fascinated by cabales and the shorter stick.
The 24-inch, I think they use.
The really short stick, and that, that always from seeing Edgar Salute, the one video that I have on him doing the knife, I always wanted to train with him, and unfortunately he passed away.
Yeah, I can just tell you, I mean, I'm fascinated with
Elemeco, yeah.
Yeah, that 50, no, I shouldn't say 50-50, but the KI in conjunction with the caviar, the compo, I think, it was a nice blend, what I've experienced and, and have seen, so.
Yeah.
Well,
just you look at the Inosanto blend, and then you look at some of the things that Guro Edgar would say in his tape, and it would be like, well, that's slightly different from what I learned, right? Would I use that application, or do I use the application that I learned? And it just gives you stuff to ponder, right? And I would like to have been exposed to more of that for my own personal journey, which Guro Dan wants us to do. And he always says, make it your personal journey using the JKD principle. Learn it, absorb what is useful to you. And I don't think I'm saying anything out of school or inappropriate.
No.
Because this is what Guro Dan wants us to do, to look at everything and absorb what is useful for me. And this is what I'm trying to do by looking at other arts, to find out it's like my original jiu-jitsu instructor, Professor Sylvain, was 6'3", 250 pounds of a bear of a man. What worked for him would not work for me. As like Guro Dan says, we're not all a size 42 coat, right? Yeah. You have to evolve for works for you. And he said it himself. He's not as fast as Bruce Lee, even though he was like a very fast collegiate sprinter, right? And one of the stories that he told me, and I'll just share for your viewers, he said, okay, get this. Dan was a 10-second 100-meter sprinter in the 50s.
In the 50s?
So that's fast for a collegiate sprinter in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
He said that Bruce Lee was so fast that when he would jab, Bruce Lee would put his forehead in and jam his fist against his chest. So you can imagine the kinetic speed that, Bruce Lee had. So he said, I'm not as fast as Bruce Lee, so I'm going to have to, absorb what is useful for him.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what he taught me, like you'll have to come up with how this works for you.
Right.
And having rolled with guys like Eric Paulson and Frank Shamrock, right? There's things that they do that are surreal, that there's no way I'll ever be able to pull off. Even though they're bigger than me, but they're not that much bigger than me. They've got maybe 25 pounds on me, or and they're stronger than me. But the thing is, they're not Brock Lesnar, right?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, like but I said, there's just no way I could ever do what they do. They're just such gifted athletes, right?
I know.
So you got to figure out what you could do if you're ever up against somebody like them, and you got to learn to fight dirty, you know. So
yeah, well, I mean, what the hell else are you gonna do?
that's why I look for things like Piper to help me.
Piper, there you go.
Learn how to fight dirty.
Wow, well, this has been wonderful. I appreciate you coming on. And,
loved it, and yeah. I hope your viewers liked it. And if I can be of any use to anybody, please feel free to reach out. And or as I said, if I can connect them with anybody I know that'll help them on their martial art journey, I'd be more than pleased to do so.
Yeah, and hopefully we still stay in contact. I hope definitely. Obviously.
Well, you're the closest guy in North America to help me on my personal Piper journey. So
yeah, and under Lloyd, I'm the only as far as teaching it. Yeah, Burton's in Hawaii, and there's me in the States. Yeah, so I'm not sure what Nigel's got for reps in this country. I'm sure it does. I'm just not sure. But yeah, definitely we'll have to get together and do our shimmer.
Yeah, have you up for a seminar.
But I appreciate you, Perry.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, you take care.
Okay, stay safe, brother.
I'm gonna try. You too. That wraps up 286. That was good. That was I enjoyed that one, and all that. So who's next? Part 2 with Martin. It's gonna be doing it. Part 2 with Conrad and Patrick. Trigger Tactics, if I'm not mistaken. Tomorrow night, 8:30. Yeah, so you can check that out. They're gonna talk about their system, their cousins, and all that. So it should be interesting. Other than that, I think that's it. And hopefully we'll see you guys then. If not, I think there's Tom Pena's got something going this weekend. I think with Alex Amorza, I believe. I think it's this weekend. Yeah. So I'm sure the flyer will come out soon enough. But at any rate, thank you for jumping and watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to FMA Discussion on YouTube, or all the monies that we receive go to charity. You'll be helping us help people. You'll be helping people. All right, folks. Take care, and we'll see you next time.